Hello and welcome back to Genesis Designs and Modelcraft, and today I've got another quick look review for you, and this one is an oddity, a very oddity. This is a special hobby CH-37 Mojave. I hope I said that right, I don't really know. It's a helicopter and it's a really strange one. So this is a Sikorsky helicopter that was designed in the 50s, and it has piston engines, in fact a pair of Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasps, believe it or not. And that really does date the aircraft because jet power and helicopters almost developed hand in hand, really. So this is a special hobby kit, and this was first released in 2007. So it's not new, but it's new to me, and isn't it strange? Let's have a look and see what we get. Beautiful, beautiful box art. As so often the case with special hobby, lovely, lovely quality boxes, high gloss, lovely box art. Really, really nice. And let's see what we get. Everything is in one bag. Let's get that open. Have a look through this thing. Right. Oh, we've got some wayward pieces. Okay. So start then with this. This is obviously the main fuselage parts. And this, when you see phrases like the largest of anything, you tend to think of something being a certain size. I would say that this is maybe a touch bigger than a Sea King-ish, Merlin sort of size, but fairly bulky with it. And coming from 2007, I would urge caution. Special hobby kits are great, I like them. Their modern kits are exceptional actually. Their older kits, however, are, you could almost class them as cottage industry style, or even sort of bordering on limited run. They are good, but they require care, let's put it that way. You can see that in the mouldings, that they're of that style. They're kind of thick, huge, great big sprue attachments, really nice surface detail. This is a factor of special hobby stuff, it's always had nice finely engraved surface detail, but a slightly kind of weird rough finish. But the nice surface detail is definitely a high point of them. If you look at the bracing there and the representation of the grills, I know with a lot of early helicopters especially, a lot of these grills were very see-through, but you really can't represent that in injection moulding, and I think this is about as good as you're going to get with that kind of representation. Let's say quite smooth, quite nicely moulded. There are no alignment pins on these parts as well. It's another thing to bear in mind. Right, here's the second sprue, and the main obvious recognisable parts here are these engine nacelles. Being equipped with large radial engines meant the aircraft was also equipped with large engine pods, as you can see here. I can't really positively identify very much here. You see the main undercarriage legs, and here you can see another feature of older special hobby kits and kits of that nature like MPM and so on, and even early Edward actually. You see there's a bit of flash here and there. The parts have a sort of quite chunky look to them almost. I tend to find with all the ones I've built that when you have to spend a bit of time cleaning up the parts, and this, with limited run kits of old, this was always the thing. You need to put the effort into preparing the kit parts for use. You can't expect to just snip them off and go. You need to sort of flatten all the mating surfaces out and clean all the mould lines and bits and bobs of flash and lumps and bumps and various silliness off the parts. That is just the thing with this type of kit. They tend to be quite soft plastic, but it's also quite thick, which gives you the sort of leeway to prep the parts up nicely. I can see a bit of sinkage around the moulding here, but it's not too bad. That's the second one. Then the third one, this is where our errant part has sprung from here. Obviously rotor blades, 5 of, and some struts and doors and bits. More of this grill detail. As I say, it's difficult for it to get a lot better than that if you're going to use moulded plastic. I think in these days of 3D printing we could probably do something pretty awesome with that, but somebody would have to want to do it for such an obscure type. Same kind of caveats are present. We've got sort of flash. I'm not sure how obvious it is on film, the rotor blades. Fair bit of flash mould seams, fairly heavy sort of positive ejector pin marks, but at least you can just trim them off when you need to. They don't have to fill them. But the detail and the scribing remains quite fine and quite nicely done. And the last one is a departure. Obviously I hope the instructions will show us here, but this is clearly not from the same kit. For a start, it's labelled as D rather than 1, 2 or 3, and the surface finish of the parts is wildly different. It's much smoother and much shinier. We also have locating pins. These are obviously auxiliary fuel tanks with little stud pylons. Completely different style, and thus I think probably moulded at a later time. Alright then, moving on to transparencies. Various side windows, main cockpit or flight deck glazing, and in fact the 2 clamshell doors for the nose are also moulded in transparent, so that these windows around the front are moulded in, which is nice. You can see there. The actual transparent sections are beautifully transparent. Really, really nicely done. Not too much distortion. They're not too thick or heavy-handed. They look good. And the framing isn't overdone at all. It's quite subtle actually. Overall, assuming that they fit, these do look quite decent. And to supplement that suite of somewhat basic but reasonably adequately done plastic parts, you do get a whole heap of resin parts. Let's see if we can figure out what we've got here. There's some internal detail. There's more likely some wheelbase, seats, some things, some more things. This looks to be a tail rotor hub, a main rotor hub. But don't know if that's a part or just some wheels. And another thing, let's put that over there in case that's a part. So let's show you this up a bit closer. Detailed main rotor hub. This appears to be the rear part of the flight deck, but has unfortunately got a little bit of a bend in it. I'm not sure how obvious that is. If you get resin parts that come like this and they're a little bit distorted, the way to fix it is to immerse the part in hot water, let the bit get warm basically, and then just gently tease it back into position, into a straight position, or straighter, because I think that's got enough of a kink in it that it might cause issues with fitment. And these, I say these look to be wheel bays, and they do look actually rather nice. But that is quite a lot of resin parts. If you bought that as a detail set, I think it would have quite a significant cost attached to it actually. The wheels are very nice as well. And this was on earlier Special Hobby kits, this was their MO really. It's produce a basic but fit for purpose set of plastic parts and then supplement that with a fairly hefty suite of resin sort of detail parts, because I think in terms of a smaller manufacturer it's cheaper and easier to produce detail parts like this in resin than it is to try and cut super nice moulds to get the parts made in plastic. And then on top of that we've got some photo etch and some decals. Let's see what we've got in here. There's also a transparent film part there. Wow, this is tight in this bag. There we go. Transparent vinyl piece. Photo etch. That looks like it's got some sort of instrument panels, some seat harnesses, none of it's coloured. Scissor links for undercarriage and various sort of handles and bits and pieces, and windscreen wipers. There we go. Let's use that as a backing, then we'll be able to see it better. There we go. And then the decal sheet. I believe I'm correct, in fact I am, because I can tell these decals are printed by whoever does Edward's decals. Special Hobby and Edward seem to be pretty much hand in glove. Of the more modern releases are very clearly linked to each other. The Special Hobby 109E kit, for example, looks like it came straight out of the Edward factory. It's superb. And these decals exhibit the same very thin, glossy, super tapered film, which can be peeled off should you wish. You can see there how tapered they are, so they almost disappear even while they're still on the sheet. Good colour density on these, everything's in register. Very nice looking sheet, but suitably basic. These aircraft did not carry much in the way of markings. Which brings us to the instructions, and here we go. Such a odd looking thing, isn't it? So as ever, we've got a bit of history here on the front, a little bit of information about the type, and going back to talking about size. Main rotor diameter is given as 22 metres, whereas a Sea King has a main rotor diameter of 19 metres, and the length of the fuselage here we've got 19.76, so nearly 20 metres long, where the Sea King is 17 metres long. So it is, broadly speaking, a similar size to a Sea King, maybe a sort of a touch larger, and it's certainly fairly bulky. Just to put that into perspective for potential purchasers. Right, parts here. The bits that are crossed out are not for use. I think these are probably for the US Marine Corps version, which is available separately. Tip and trick. For easier assembly, we recommend the use of our pre-cut mask set, sold separately. Lovely. Colour call-outs are Guns, Aqueous and Mr. Colour here. And we'll go straight into construction, which clearly starts with the cockpit or the flight deck area. Now, Special Hobby use various words to describe the different parts. So per means resin, and it does explain that here. Per parts are those, clear parts are CP, and photo etch parts down here are PP. So all of this is purely resin and photo etch, no plastic parts involved whatsoever. That quickly changes with the assembly of the main fuselage parts. There is no internal detail at all, but if you just paint it black, that won't be obvious. You could, if you wish, cut out the main fuselage doors, the loading doors, to display that lack of internal detail. I don't know why you would, but clearly if you wanted to add an interior, maybe chuck a Jeep or two inside, you can cut the door out to show that. Assembly of these large nacelles comes next, including that undercarriage bay. And the undercarriage itself, a combination of plastic parts, photo etch parts and resin parts again makes that up. You end up with complete sub-assemblies like this. I would suggest anyone who's actually building it might like to attach the stub wings but leave these nacelles off and paint and decal the model and then fit these, because these are madly going to get in the way whilst you're trying to work on it. A bit more photo etch for the overhead control panel for the canopy. There's your main rotor assembly going together. And then the clamshell doors, which again you could pose them open to show off the lack of internal detail if you wanted. And again, lots of small parts to add on to sort of elevate that detail level. Lots of little handles and gubbins of photo etch and resin. Which continues back here on the tail rotor. This blending of photo etch and resin as part of the construction right from the get-go. Moving on, fitting those sliding doors. So maybe it's had you cut that out to enable fitting the sliding doors, but I can't see why they wouldn't just fit over the top of it. I don't think you'd need to cut it out really. Fuel tanks, extra fuel tanks, and then another extra fuel tank, and that is done. And that part that was clear in the back is actually a loading step, so I'm glad I didn't throw that away or in the bin. Here's an advert for some sanding sticks and razor saws, and that brings us on to the markings options. So the first one is Wayne's Workhorse of Blue Spring Flight in operating out of Da Nang in 1964. This aircraft sported white eyeballs with blue pupils and red lashes on the engine nacelles at the front. It's quite comical, and it's got Wayne's Workhorse emblazoned on the side there. Other than that, it is purely olive drab overall, no colour at all. This is the same aircraft again. This is Wayne's Workhorse, but at a later time, a year later. Still Blue Spring Flight, still Da Nang Air Force Base, but the eyeballs have been removed. Presumably some senior officer objected to them and had to paint them over. And the final option is Tired Dude from Illesheim Air Force Base in Germany, 1959. This aircraft has got some blue and white checkers, it's got high-vis markings, it's generally more attractive if you like that kind of thing, and is in fact still with us as part of the Pima Aerospace Museum in Arizona. And the final couple of pages of the booklet are again little adverts. So we've got some kits there, a US stealth test plane and a Thunder Scepter, ground power units, starting cart and this is an air start trolley, this is a ground power unit, some chocks, and some personnel. All of these presumably would suit the kit. And then on the back, an advert for Cobra kit, C-41A, and best box art in the last few years, I think, the Thunderstreak. Very, very nice. So there you have it. That is a quick look at the 1/72 scale Special Hobby CH-37A, and I hope that you've gleaned from that quick look that this is not a kit for a beginner. It utilises resin and photo etch as part of the construction. It's not optional, you have to use it. And the plastic parts are of the more cottage industry bias, which means that you can expect them to need a little bit of fettling before they're going to fit together properly. But the upside is that the quality of the surface detail and all of that sort of stuff is actually pretty good. Now, another thing Special Hobby kits are quite well known for, being honest, is being a bit expensive. And the retail price for this kit is a quite glorious £38.50. Now, I got this kit from modelsforsale.com, and the price being charged for this kit at the moment there is £18.99, so it's £19. I think at that price this kit stands out as a bit of a bargain. With all of that included resin and photo etch, if you have the skill set and the want to make a good kit, a good model out of this, I think it's entirely possible. But I will stress again that this isn't going to be an easy build for someone with less experience working with those mediums, probably. But it's certainly an interesting subject, and not one that I was familiar with until I saw this, and I did enjoy reading up and finding some information on it. And I do think that what you get in the box looks really quite buildable and will certainly result in a very interesting and eye-catching model, probably for all the wrong reasons. It is so strange looking. It definitely comes under the category of being so ungainly it's cool, like most two-seat jet fighters, A-10s and Apaches do. I think the fact that it's so odd looking offers an interest all of its own, and as I say, I hadn't even heard of this thing beforehand, so that in itself I find interesting. So there you have it. If you too find that interesting, currently available for £19 from modelsforsale.com. So thanks for watching, and thanks as always for all of your support. I really do appreciate it very, very much. And with all of that said, I think it only remains for me to say, until next time, look after yourselves, look after each other, and Genesis out.